Imagine an English girl who, from the age of 3, constantly talks about wanting to go home to Egypt, then decades later makes archaeological discoveries that shock the scientific world. Or a Swedish girl who spontaneously knows the most intimate details of Anne Frank's life without ever hearing about her. These aren't sci-fi stories or mystical visions. These are scientifically documented cases that the world's leading researchers have studied and analyzed for decades. Today, you'll hear 5 reincarnation stories that have shaken the scientific world and challenge everything we thought about death and the nature of consciousness. These cases aren't random anecdotes, but carefully documented and authenticated stories by Dr. Ian Stevenson and his followers, stemming from decades of work by the University of Virginia Medical Center Research Group. Every case we'll discuss underwent rigorous scientific examination. Researchers personally visited families, spoke with witnesses, verified historical data, and ruled out all possible alternative explanations. These stories are special because they contain such specific details that the subjects could not have acquired through any normal means. The first case I'll tell you about is perhaps the longest and most thoroughly documented reincarnation story in history. Dorothy Eady, the English woman who lived in Egypt 3,000 years ago. Dorothy Louise Eady fell down the stairs in her family home in London in January 1914 when she was 3 years old. The doctor pronounced her dead, but an hour later, Dorothy unexpectedly regained consciousness. This incident completely changed Dorothy's personality. Before, she had been a quiet, well-behaved English girl. After the incident, she constantly talked about wanting to go home to Egypt. She burst into tears when she saw pictures of Egyptian artifacts in the British Museum and said, "These belong to my people." Dorothy's parents initially thought the head injury caused these strange behaviors. But as Dorothy grew up, she knew more and more details about ancient Egypt, things she had never learned in school or from books. As a teenager, Dorothy began writing hieroglyphs without anyone teaching her. She knew the names of ancient Egyptian gods, religious ceremonies, and even details of daily life from Egypt 3,000 years ago. Dorothy's knowledge of ancient Egypt was encyclopedic, wrote Dr. Hani El-Zaini, an Egyptologist who worked with Dorothy for years. She knew details that only the finest specialists knew, and often said things that were only later confirmed by archaeological excavations. Dorothy claimed that in her previous life her name was Bentreshit, and she served as a priestess in Pharaoh Seti III's temple in Abydos. She described how the temple looked in ancient times, what ceremonies were held there, and even knew where the sacred garden was, which had long since been destroyed. The most shocking moment came in 1926 when Dorothy first visited Egypt. In Abydos at Seti's temple, without needing a guide, she knew exactly where to go. She showed archaeologists where rooms were that were only excavated years later. Dr. Klaus Baer, an Egyptologist at the University of Chicago, who examined Dorothy's knowledge, wrote, Seti, as Dorothy later became known, possessed knowledge of ancient Egyptian culture and religion that surpassed that of many professional Egyptologists. Dorothy lived in Egypt for decades, and archaeologists often sought her help during excavations. She accurately predicted several times what would be found at a given location. The Egyptian Department of Antiquities officially recognized Dorothy's contribution to science. The most astonishing case occurred when Dorothy claimed there had been a garden behind Seti's temple in ancient times. Archaeologists were skeptical because there was no trace of this. But when they began excavating that area in 1972, they found exactly the garden Dorothy had described, even accurately predicting the placement of plants. Cameron Costa, the Brazilian boy who accessed a dead farmer's memories. Cameron Costa was born in 1996 in Brazil, in a small village in the interior of São Paulo state. From the age of 2, he began saying strange things to his parents. He claimed he wasn't Cameron, but José da Silva, and that he had a farm in the neighboring village. The little boy talked about this other life in such detail as if he had lived it yesterday. He knew what crops José da Silva grew, how many animals he had, and even exactly where his farm was located. He spoke about his wife, Maria da Silva, and their 3 children. Cameron's parents, Ana and Roberto Costa, initially thought their son watched too much television or was overly imaginative. But Cameron said such specific details that a small child couldn't have known. He knew what illness José died from when it happened, and even where he was buried. Cameron constantly burst into tears and said he missed his wife and children, Ana Costa recalled. He spoke about them with a sadness that wasn't natural for a 3-year-old. His parents finally decided to investigate Cameron's claims. They went to the village Cameron described and tried to find José da Silva's farm. What they found shocked them. There really had lived a José da Silva, a farmer who died under exactly the circumstances Cameron described. Local residents confirmed the details Cameron had mentioned. The farm was exactly where Cameron said it was, and even the division of the fields matched the little boy's description. The most shocking moment came when Cameron met José da Silva's widow, Maria, and the children. Maria burst into tears when Cameron said things that only José could have known. This little boy knew where José kept his tools, what foods he liked, and even where a little money was buried behind the house, Maria da Silva recounted. He said things that only my husband could have known. Cameron even knew which room José slept in, what animals he had, and what problems he had with neighbors. Dr. Erlendur Haraldsson, an Icelandic psychologist who studies reincarnation, personally examined Cameron's case. This is one of the most convincing cases I've ever encountered in South America, said Dr. Haraldsson. The number and accuracy of details is something a small child couldn't normally know. We examined every alternative explanation, but none could account for Cameron's knowledge. Jenny Taylor, the woman who remembered her own execution during the French Revolution. Jenny Taylor was born in England in 1950 and felt her whole life that something was missing from her past. At 28, when she first participated in regression hypnosis, memories of another life suddenly burst forth from her. Under hypnosis, Jenny completely changed. She began speaking with a French accent, but not modern French, the dialect of 18th century peasants. She said she lived under the name Marie Antoinette in a small village in Normandy and was executed by guillotine in 1793. The hypnotist couldn't understand what Jenny was saying, recalled Dr. Michael Newton, who conducted the session. She used a French dialect that only historians know. We later had to have experts translate what she said. Jenny, as Marie Antoinette, not to be confused with the Queen, described her life during the French Revolution in detail. She spoke about how peasants lived at that time, what the famine was like, and how revolutionary forces took over. The most shocking part was when Jenny described her own execution. She spoke about the guillotine, the crowd, and the entire procedure with such detail as if she had been there. She even knew what prayers were said before execution and what was the last thing she saw. Jenny described what the scaffold looked like, what sounds she heard from the crowd, and even knew what the guillotine blade sounded like, Dr. Newton wrote in his report. She said details that only an eyewitness could have known. Researchers began investigating Jenny's claims. Archival research revealed that there really had lived a peasant woman named Marie Antoinette in the village where Jenny described. Local church records confirmed that this woman was indeed executed in 1793. Linguistic analysis also confirmed Jenny's claims. Dr. Pierre Dubois, a French dialectologist at the Sorbonne who analyzed Jenny's speech, determined, "This woman speaks a French dialect that died out 200 years ago. She couldn't have learned this dialect from any book or film." If you've enjoyed what you've heard so far and want more similar spiritual content, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Turn on notifications too so you'll be notified of all our new videos. Patrick Christensen, the boy who was reborn as his own brother. Patrick Christensen's case is perhaps one of the most shocking in reincarnation research history because it happened within the same family. Patrick was born in 1990, exactly 1 year after his brother Kevin died of leukemia. But from birth, Patrick showed signs suggesting he might be Kevin's reincarnation. Patrick's birthmarks were exactly where Kevin's fatal injuries had been. Before Kevin's death, he underwent a biopsy on his neck that left scars. Patrick was born with a scar-like mark in exactly the same place. Kevin also had a whiteness in his right eye from chemotherapy. Patrick's right eye also developed abnormally. When they saw Patrick in the maternity ward, everyone was shocked, recalled Lisa Christensen, Patrick's mother. The birthmarks were exactly where Kevin's injuries had been. This can't be coincidence. But the physical similarities were just the beginning. As Patrick learned to speak, he began saying things that referred to Kevin. He said he remembered the hospital, the doctors, and even the pain that Kevin felt during treatments. When Patrick was 3, he told his mother, "I remember when I was sick and the doctors operated on my head." Kevin had indeed undergone brain surgery during his leukemia treatment. Patrick could never have heard about this because his parents never spoke about Kevin's illness in front of the child. The little boy even recognized Kevin's toys without anyone telling him whose they were. When Patrick first saw Kevin's old room, which had been closed for years, he immediately went to the toys that were Kevin's favorites. Patrick knew which toys Kevin liked best, recalled John Christensen, Patrick's father. He chose ones that Kevin had hidden deep in the closet for years. There was no way he could have known they were there. Patrick's behavior also resembled Kevin's. He liked the same activities, behaved the same way in certain situations, and even his speech patterns were similar. Family members often felt as if Kevin had returned in a new body. Dr. Ian Stevenson personally examined Patrick's case and classified it as one of the most convincing intrafamilial reincarnation cases. The physical and behavioral similarities, along with Patrick's specific memories, are coincidences that are statistically impossible, Stevenson wrote in his report. Barbro Karlen, the Swedish girl who believed she was Anne Frank's reincarnation. Barbro Karlin was born in 1954 in Sweden, in a small village. From a very early age, she said strange things to her parents. She claimed her real name wasn't Barbro, but Anne, and that she had lived in a hiding place in Amsterdam. Barbro's parents had never spoken to her about Anne Frank or the Holocaust. Yet the little girl knew details about Anne Frank's life that a Swedish child couldn't have known. She spoke about having to hide from Nazi persecution, about writing a diary, and about finally being captured. Barbro constantly talked about wanting to go back to Amsterdam, recalled Inez Carlin, Barbro's mother. She spoke about it with a sadness that wasn't natural for a 6-year-old. Barbro wanted to be a writer from childhood and kept a diary, just as Anne Frank had done. The style and themes of her writing were strikingly similar to Anne Frank's diary entries, without her ever having read them. At 16, Barbro finally made it to Amsterdam and visited Anne Frank's house. The museum guide was shocked when Barbro knew exactly where rooms were that aren't shown to the public. Barbro knew details about the hiding place that aren't included in the official tour, recalled Otto Frank, Anne Frank's father, who personally met Barbro. She knew where Anne's bed was originally, and even what the mood was like in the hiding place. The most shocking moment came when Barbro met Otto Frank. The elderly man burst into tears when Barbro said personal things that only Anne could have known. She spoke about Anne's relationship with her father, what she felt during hiding, and even knew what dreams Anne had about the future. When Barbro speaks, I hear Anne's voice, Otto Frank said in an interview. She says things that only Anne could have said. This goes beyond any coincidental resemblance. Barbro later became a writer herself and published several books about her childhood memories. Her works show striking similarity to Anne Frank's writing style and sensitivity. Dr. Jim Tucker, who heads the University of Virginia's Reincarnation Research Division, considers Barbro's case one of the most convincing European reincarnation stories. The cultural distance between Sweden and wartime Amsterdam, combined with Barbro's spontaneous knowledge of Anne Frank's life, is a coincidence that's hard to explain otherwise, Tucker wrote. Science's position and deeper connections. These 5 stories are all real cases that scientists documented and studied over years or decades. Dr. Ian Stevenson, the father of reincarnation research, and his followers collected more than 6,000 similar cases worldwide. But these cases don't happen randomly. There's a pattern that repeats in every culture and every age. Dr. Ian Stevenson, who researched the reincarnation phenomenon for 50 years, wrote, "These cases provide evidence suggesting that consciousness can survive bodily death and transfer to another body. According to the latest research, such memories most commonly occur in cases of violent or sudden death." Dr. Jim Tucker, who continued Stevenson's work, determined, "Acute or traumatic deaths are 6 times more likely to be accompanied by memories in the new life, as if consciousness needs to finish the story or process the trauma." Another notable pattern is that these memories most commonly appear between ages 2 and 8. This is the period when children's language skills are still developing, but they're already able to communicate. Dr. Erlendur Haraldsson, an Icelandic psychologist, notes, "Interestingly, as children grow up, these memories usually fade, as if the new life's experiences overwrite the old ones." Cultural differences are also instructive. In Eastern cultures, where reincarnation is an accepted religious teaching, children more often speak about previous lives. In the West, where this is less accepted, parents often ignore or try to explain away these claims. But perhaps the most important question is what these cases mean for the nature of consciousness. If consciousness can truly survive the death of the body, then everything we knew about human existence needs to be reconsidered. According to Dr. Jim Tucker, these cases suggest that consciousness is not a local phenomenon. Consciousness doesn't originate in the brain, but rather the brain serves as a receiver, capable of picking up consciousness like a radio picks up radio waves. This approach aligns with certain quantum physics theories that suggest consciousness is a fundamental part of the universe. Dr. Stuart Hameroff, an anesthesiologist and consciousness researcher at the University of Arizona, writes, "If consciousness truly exists in the form of quantum information, then it might be able to survive the death of the physical body and transfer to another quantum system." Perhaps the most significant result of reincarnation research is that it challenges the materialist worldview, which holds that consciousness is merely a byproduct of brain function. Dr. Pim van Lommel, a Dutch cardiologist who studies near-death experiences, says, These cases suggest that consciousness doesn't depend on the brain, but rather the brain serves as an interface between consciousness and the physical world. Conclusions and spiritual message. These stories aren't just interesting as scientific curiosities. They carry a deeper message about the nature of human existence and life after death. If these cases are true, then everything we knew about death needs to be reconsidered. The possibility of reincarnation means that our existence doesn't end with physical death. It means we can view our actions, decisions, and spiritual development as part of a larger cosmic process. Every life is a step in the soul's evolution. Dr. Brian Weiss, a psychiatrist and regression hypnosis expert, puts it this way: if reincarnation is real, then every relationship, every encounter, and every experience is part of a larger plan. Souls meet again and again to fulfill their shared karma and continue their shared learning. This perspective can radically change our relationship with death. Death wouldn't be an ending, but a transition. Not something to fear, but the beginning of a new chapter in the soul's journey. The idea of reincarnation also means we're responsible for our actions, not just in this life, but in future lives as well. According to the law of karma, every action has consequences that can influence our future incarnations. But this isn't just about responsibility, it's also about hope. It means that every difficulty, every suffering, and every challenge we experience in this life is part of the soul's development. Every experience is a teaching, every relationship an opportunity for love and forgiveness. These cases also show that love and relationships extend beyond the boundaries of a single life. Patrick and Kevin's case suggests that family bonds can be so strong they survive death. Dorothy Eady and Ben Treshit's connection shows that even religious commitment can span millennia. Perhaps the most important message is that we're not alone in this universe. We're part of a larger cosmic system where every soul is connected to others, and we're all heading toward a common goal: the realization of complete consciousness and love. If these stories are true, then every day is an opportunity to grow, to forgive, to love, and to prepare for our future lives. Every decision we make, every word we speak, and every thought we think is part of this larger journey. This perspective can help us be more at peace with death, find deeper meaning in suffering, and take greater responsibility for our actions. But perhaps most importantly, it can help us understand that every life is valuable, every soul is sacred, and we're all participants in a shared journey toward eternity. If you enjoyed this video and want more similar spiritual content, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Turn on notifications too, so you'll be notified of all our new videos. Comment below about what you think of these stories. Do you believe in reincarnation? Or do you remain skeptical? And if you have your own experience or story to share, feel free to write about it. Remember, if these stories are true, then you too are part of an infinite journey. Every day is a new opportunity to grow, to love, and to prepare the next step in your soul's evolution.